The Tesla's headlights cut through the blizzard like dying stars before everything went dark. Blood streaked down CEO Veronica Chen's face as her billion-dollar empire meant nothing against the Vermont ice. When Jack Morrison's calloused hands pulled her from the wreckage, neither knew that this rescue would expose 3 years of corporate lies, a dead wife's last gift, and a little girl's prayer for a mother. Welcome to a story where walking away from $5 million was the easiest choice Jack ever made. Let me know what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The snow fell harder than it had in 20 years, each flake adding weight to Jack Morrison's already heavy shoulders. His pickup truck crawled along Route 7 windshield wipers, fighting a losing battle against the accumulation. In the back seat, 8-year-old Emma hummed quietly to herself, her breath fogging the window as she traced patterns in the condensation. "Dad, do you think Mom can see the snow from heaven?" Emma asked, her voice cutting through the rumble of the engine. Jack's hands tightened on the steering wheel. 3 years since Sarah died, and Emma's question still caught him off guard. "I think she can see everything beautiful, sweetheart, especially you." The clock on the dashboard read 9:47 p.m. They were returning from Emma's school science fair. She'd won second place for her project on renewable energy, a fact that filled Jack with pride even as it reminded him of his own engineering days before TechCore Industries destroyed everything. That's when he saw it. The Tesla Model S had wrapped itself around a cluster of birch trees, its sleek black frame crumpled like expensive origami. Steam rose from the hood, mixing with the falling snow. No other cars on the road. No witnesses except the storm. "Stay in the truck, Emma. Lock the doors." Jack grabbed his emergency kit and flashlight, his work boots crunching through knee-deep snow. The driver's side door was crushed inward. Through the spider-webbed glass, he could see her, a woman, maybe 35, designer clothes now torn and bloody. Dark hair matted with blood from a gash across her forehead. She wasn't moving. Jack tried the passenger door. Locked. The window was intact. He grabbed a tire iron from his kit and made a decision that would change everything. The glass shattered inward with a crystalline shower. He reached through, unlocked the door, and crawled across to reach her. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" He checked for a pulse, weak but steady. Blood flowed freely from her head wound, and he needed something to stop it. His emergency kit had gauze, but not enough. Then his fingers found it in his pocket, Sarah's scarf. The last one she'd knitted before the cancer took her strength. Soft green wool meant for Emma, but never finished. He pressed it against the woman's forehead, watching Sarah's final creation turn red. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he whispered to the storm, "but you would have done the same." The woman's eyes fluttered open, striking green like sea glass. She tried to focus on him, lips moving soundlessly. "Don't talk. I'm going to get you out." Jack carefully maneuvered her from the wreckage, his muscles straining. She was lighter than expected, but dead weight was always heavy. Her designer coat, probably worth more than his monthly mortgage, was ruined. He carried her to his truck. Emma's eyes wide as saucers when she saw them coming. "Emma, climb in front. Careful now." Jack laid the woman across the back seat, Sarah's scarf still pressed against her wound. "Is she gonna die, Daddy?" Emma's voice was small. "Not if I can help it." The nearest hospital was 40 minutes away in good weather. Tonight it might as well have been on the moon. But Jack knew these roads like the lines on his weathered hands. He drove with practiced precision, one eye on the mirror, watching the woman's chest rise and fall. "What's your name?" he asked when her eyes opened again. "Vicky?" she managed. "Vicky Miller." "I'm Jack. That's Emma. You're going to be okay, Vicky." She tried to sit up, winced, and fell back. "My phone. Need to call." "Your phone's probably back with your car. Don't worry about that now." "No, you don't understand. I have to—" She started coughing, specks of blood on her lips. "Emma, there's water in my lunch bag. Can you pass it back?" Emma twisted in her seat, offering the bottle with the solemnity of a child who understood this was serious. The woman Vicky took small sips, her hands shaking. "Thank you," she whispered to Emma. "Both of you." The emergency room at Mercy General was chaos when they arrived. A multi-car pileup on I-89 had brought in a dozen injured. Jack carried Vicky through the sliding doors, Emma trailing behind. "Head trauma, possible internal injuries," Jack told the triage nurse. Car accident on Route 7 about 15 miles south. They whisked her away on a gurney, but not before she grabbed Jack's hand. Wait, your scarf. Sarah's scarf was ruined more red than green now. Keep it, Jack said. You needed it more. The hours crawled by in the waiting room. Emma fell asleep against Jack's shoulder, her science fair ribbon still pinned to her coat. He thought about leaving. They weren't family, weren't even friends. But something made him stay. Maybe it was the way she'd grabbed his hand. Maybe it was Sarah's voice in his memory telling him to be kind. A doctor emerged around 2 a.m. Are you the family of the woman from the car accident? We found her. Is she okay? Concussion, 3 broken ribs, substantial bruising. She's lucky. Another hour in that cold. The doctor shook his head. She's asking for you. Vicky looked smaller in the hospital bed, vulnerability replacing whatever armor she usually wore. Her eyes found his immediately. You stayed. Seemed like the right thing to do. The scarf. I'm sorry it's ruined. Jack shrugged, but Emma, now awake, piped up. That was Mom's last scarf. She made it when she was sick. Vicky's face changed, stricken. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I'll replace it. You can't replace something like that, Jack said quietly. But that's okay. It did what it was meant to do. It helped someone. Tears ran down Vicky's cheeks. I don't even know your last name. Morrison. Jack Morrison. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition, fear. But it passed quickly. The doctors say I need to stay for observation. At least 3 days. My phone was in the car. I don't suppose you could... I'll drive back tomorrow, see if it's still there. Though the tow trucks have probably taken everything by now. I don't have anyone to call anyway, she admitted, then seemed surprised she'd said it. Everyone has someone, Emma said with 8-year-old certainty. Vicky's smile was sad. Not everyone, sweetheart. Over the next 3 days, Jack and Emma visited daily. It started as courtesy checking on someone they'd helped, but Vicky and Emma connected immediately. She helped Emma with her math homework, showing her tricks Jack didn't know. She listened intently as Emma explained her science fair project, asking questions that made Emma beam. You know a lot about renewable energy, Emma observed on the second day. I work in marketing for a tech company. We do some green initiatives. Jack noticed the hesitation, filed it away. He noticed other things too. The way she held herself, even injured, straight-backed, authoritative. The expensive watch she'd tried to hide under the hospital blanket. The way nurses seemed to defer to her without realizing it. Where will you go when they discharge you? Jack asked on the 3rd day. Hotel, I suppose, until I can arrange transportation back to Boston. In this weather, hotels are booked solid with stranded travelers. Emma tugged his sleeve. Dad, we have the guest room. Emma, I'm sure Ms. Miller would prefer... Actually, Vicky interrupted. If it's not too much trouble, I could pay rent, of course. We don't need your money, Jack said, perhaps too sharply. TechCore's betrayal had left him suspicious of easy money. But you're welcome to stay until you're back on your feet. Their house was nothing special, a 2-story colonial that needed paint rooms filled with memories and Emma's artwork. Jack carried Vicky's hospital bag while Emma gave the grand tour. This is where I practice piano, but I'm not very good yet. This is Dad's workshop. He fixes everything. He used to be an engineer before. Emma stopped glancing at her father. Before I decided to work with my hands instead, Jack finished smoothly. More honest work. Vicky studied the workshop through the doorway, organized tools, half-finished furniture projects, blueprints weighted down with coffee mugs. You were an engineer? Another lifetime. She didn't press, but Jack caught her looking at him differently. That first night, Vicky insisted on cooking dinner despite her injuries. It's the least I can do. She moved through their kitchen with surprising grace, finding spices Jack forgot they had, transforming simple ingredients into something that smelled like a 5-star restaurant. Where'd you learn to cook like that? Emma asked, sauce on her chin. My grandmother. She said cooking was like chemistry, precision, and love in equal measure. Mom used to say that about knitting, Emma offered, counting stitches and putting love in every loop. The table went quiet. Jack expected awkwardness, but Vicky simply reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. Your mom sounds like she was very wise. She was the best, Emma said simply. I asked the stars to send us someone like her. Maybe they sent you. Vicky's breath caught. Jack intervened. Emma, why don't you clear the table? It's almost bedtime. Later, after Emma was asleep, Jack found Vicky on the porch, despite the cold, wrapped in one of Sarah's old quilts. I should tell you something, she started. You don't owe us explanations. But I do. My name is Vicky Miller, but that's not the whole truth. Jack waited. In his experience, truth came easier with patience. I work for TechCore Industries. His coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. TechCore. You know the company. Everyone knows TechCore. His voice was carefully neutral. I'm senior management, here doing site evaluation for a potential project. What kind of project? Data center. Your town is on the short list. Cheap land tax incentives, good infrastructure. Jack set down his mug harder than necessary. And let me guess a few hundred jobs that'll disappear the moment you find somewhere cheaper. It's not like that. It's always like that with companies like TechCore. He stood. Thank you for being honest. You're still welcome here until you're healed. He went inside before she could respond, missing the way her shoulders slumped the tears she wouldn't let fall. The next morning brought tension thick as the fresh snowfall. Jack was cordial, but distant, speaking to Vicky only when necessary. Emma, oblivious, chattered through breakfast about her upcoming holiday concert. Will you come? Vicky, Dad always comes, but he says he has two left ears for music. I'm sure Miss Miller has to get back to Boston soon, Em. Actually, Vicky said quietly, I'd love to come, if that's okay. Emma beamed. Jack grunted noncommittally. That afternoon, while Emma was at school, Vicky cornered Jack in his workshop. You hate TechCore specifically, not just generally. Why? Does it matter? To me, yes. Jack set down his sandpaper. 3 years ago, I worked for Morrison Engineering. Small firm, but we had a contract to evaluate TechCore's environmental compliance at their Hartford facility. I found violations, big ones, illegal chemical disposal, falsified reports. What happened? I reported it. TechCore's lawyers happened. They buried the report, discredited me, got me blacklisted. My firm folded. I couldn't find work. Sarah was already sick and we lost our health insurance. She died 6 months later. Vicky's face had gone pale. The Hartford facility, 3 years ago. That was... Marcus Webb ran that division. Your colleague, I assume. She sank onto a workbench stool. Marcus Webb was being investigated internally. Those violations, we just uncovered them ourselves. If we'd known sooner, would it have mattered? Would TechCore have chosen integrity over profit? I would have, she said fiercely. I'm trying to change things from the inside. Good luck with that. Corporations don't change. They consume. You don't know me. I know enough. She stood wincing at her still healing ribs. You know what you've decided to know. You saved my life, but you can't see past your anger long enough to realize not everyone at TechCore is Marcus Webb. Prove it. How to? Stop the data center project. It'll destroy this town. You don't even know the specifics. I know TechCore. Promise jobs deliver pollution. Promise investment deliver extraction. This town is already hanging by a thread. What if I could guarantee environmental protections, local hiring requirements, community investment that actually stays? Jack laughed bitterly. You mean like TechCore guaranteed accurate environmental reports in Hartford? She flinched but held his gaze. I'm not Marcus Webb. No, you're just his boss. The revelation hung between them like a blade. Vicky Veronica Chen, he realized, now recognizing her from news articles, straightened despite the pain. I am his boss, which means I can fire him, which I'm planning to do as soon as I have enough evidence. Evidence of what? Hartford wasn't an isolated incident. He's been covering up violations at 6 facilities. I've been gathering proof for months. Why not just fire him? Because he has the board's ear. Because he has dirt on half the executives. Because if I move without absolute proof, he'll bury me like he buried you. Jack studied her, really looked for the first time since learning who she was. Exhaustion lined her eyes, stress etched in every line of her face. "The accident?" he said slowly. "Was it really an accident?" She looked away. "I don't know. My brake line was corroded. Could be winter damage. Could be... Webb? I can't prove anything. So you're fighting a war inside your own company. Someone has to. Why you? Because I helped build it. Because I believed we could do good while doing well. Because..." She paused, vulnerable. "Because I don't have anything else. No family, no real friends, just work. And if my work is corrupt, what does that make me?" Before Jack could respond, Emma burst through the door home from school. "Vicky, guess what? We're doing a play about environmental heroes. Can you help me with my lines?" The irony wasn't lost on either adult. That evening, something shifted. Maybe it was watching Vicky patiently help Emma with her homework. Maybe it was the way she laughed, really laughed at Emma's jokes. Maybe it was how she moved through their house like she belonged there fixing dinner while humming off-key. "You're not what I expected from a CEO," Jack admitted as they did dishes. "You're not what I expected from a small-town whistleblower. Former whistleblower. Now I just fix furniture and raise my daughter." "Sounds like a good life." "It is." She handed him a plate to dry. "I meant what I said. About the data center. I could structure it differently." "Why does it matter what I think?" "Because you're the only person I've met in years who told me the truth without wanting something in return." "I wanted you to leave." Past tense. He didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Vicky worked from Jack's laptop running a billion-dollar company from a kitchen table covered in Emma's art projects. She took calls in the workshop, pacing between half-finished chairs while discussing quarterly projections. Jack pretended not to be impressed by her negotiation skills, the way she could shift from warm to steel in seconds. Emma adored her. They baked cookies together, Vicky teaching her chemistry through measuring ingredients. They built a solar panel for Emma's dollhouse, Vicky explaining photovoltaic cells in terms an 8-year-old could grasp. "You're good with her," Jack said one evening, watching them work on a puzzle. "She's easy to be good with. You've raised an amazing daughter. Sarah gets most of the credit. I'm just trying not to mess it up." "You're not." She placed a puzzle piece. "You're doing beautifully." The domesticity was dangerous, Jack knew. This wasn't real life. It was a snow globe, perfect and temporary. But he found himself looking forward to dinners together, to Vicky's stories about boardroom disasters that made Emma giggle, to the way she sang in the shower badly, to how she fell asleep on the couch, reading Emma bedtime stories. "How long are you staying?" Emma asked one night, curled between them during movie night. "I don't know, sweetheart. Until my ribs heal, at least." "I hope they take forever to heal," Emma said sleepily. Jack met Vicky's eyes over his daughter's head. Something passed between them. Awareness, possibility, fear. The spell broke the next morning with a knock at the door. Marcus Webb stood on their porch, immaculate in a $1,000 coat, smiling like a shark. "Veronica, we've been worried." Jack watched her transform, warmth replaced by corporate armor, vulnerability, locked away. "Marcus, how did you find me?" "GPS on the rental car." "May I come in?" She stepped aside. Webb entered his eyes, cataloging everything, the modest furniture, Emma's drawings, Jack in his work clothes. "Mr. Morrison." Webb's recognition was immediate. "What an interesting coincidence." "You two know each other." Vicky's voice was carefully neutral. "Mr. Morrison once worked for a firm we contracted. There were some disagreements about his findings." "You mean you buried his report and destroyed his life?" Webb's smile didn't waver. "I protected the company from baseless accusations, as is my job." "Get out of my house," Jack said quietly. "I'm here for Veronica. We have a board meeting tomorrow. The data center proposal needs to be presented." "I'll dial in." "The board wants you there in person. They're concerned about your absence." "I was in a car accident." "Yes, about that. Interesting timing right before the vote." The threat was subtle but clear. Vicky stood straighter. "I'll be there." "Excellent. I'll have a car pick you up in an hour." After he left, the kitchen felt smaller. Emma had retreated upstairs, sensing adult tension. "You have to go," Jack said. "Yes." "Will you come back?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Do you want me to—" "Emma." "I didn't ask about Emma." He couldn't answer. She nodded, understanding. "I'll fight against the data center," she said. "I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep." "I don't." She packed quickly, efficiently. Emma hugged her fiercely at the door. "You'll come to my concert, right? You promised." "I'll try, sweetheart." "That means no?" Emma said, wise beyond her years. Adults always say, "I'll try," when they mean no. Vicky knelt, wincing at her ribs. "You're right. That's not fair. I promise. I'll come to your concert. No matter what." Pinky promise. Pinky promise. Jack watched the Blacktown car disappear into the winter morning, Emma's hand in his. "She's not coming back, is she, Dad?" "I don't know, Em." "I think she is. She's different from other adults. She keeps promises." Jack wanted to protect his daughter from disappointment, but something in Vicky's eyes made him hope Emma was right. The days without her felt longer. The house seemed quieter, even with Emma's constant chatter. Jack threw himself into work, finishing projects that had sat idle for months. But at dinner, they both looked at the empty third chair. "Do you think she's okay?" Emma asked on the third night. "I'm sure she's fine. She's very smart." "Smart people can still be sad." Jack had no answer for that. The morning of the town hall meeting arrived with fresh snow and nervous energy. The data center proposal had leaked, dividing the town. Half saw jobs and investment. Half saw another corporation coming to extract and leave. Jack wasn't planning to go. It would only make him angry watching TechCore representatives lie with practiced ease. But Emma had other plans. "We have to go, Dad. We have to fight for our town." "It won't make a difference, Em. These decisions are already made." Mom wouldn't give up. The words hit like cold water. Sarah would have been at that meeting front row asking hard questions. She would have fought even knowing she might lose. "Get your coat," he told Emma. The community center was packed. Jack recognized everyone, neighbors, teachers, store owners, all hoping for different outcomes. At the front, a presentation screen showed TechCore's logo. Marcus Webb stood beside it, confident and polished. "Where's Vicky?" Emma whispered. "I don't know." Webb began his presentation. Jobs numbers, tax revenue, economic growth. All the usual promises wrapped in glossy graphics. No mention of environmental impact, no discussion of what happened to other towns TechCore had invested in. "The facility will bring unprecedented opportunity to Millbrook," Webb proclaimed. "TechCore is committed to being a partner in your prosperity." "What about environmental protections?" called out Mrs. Chen from the library. "All federal standards will be met," Webb said smoothly. "Federal standards aren't enough." Jack found himself standing. "Not for the watershed that feeds 3 counties, not for the farmland you'll contaminate." Webb's smile turned predatory. "Mr. Morrison, I wasn't aware you were an environmental expert." "Oh wait, you were discredited for false reporting, weren't you?" Murmurs through the crowd. Jack's reputation rebuilt slowly over 3 years, cracking. "The only false reports were the ones TechCore filed after burying my findings. Allegations without proof. Though I understand you've had a difficult time since leaving engineering. Personal tragedies can cloud judgment." Using Sarah's death as a weapon. Jack stepped forward, fists clenched, but Emma grabbed his hand. That's when the back door opened. Veronica Chen entered like winter wind, cold, powerful, undeniable. She wore a steel gray suit, her presence commanding immediate attention. But Jack saw what others might miss: the exhaustion beneath perfect makeup, the slight favor of her still healing ribs. "My apologies for being late," she said, walking to the front. Traffic from Boston was terrible. Webb's face cycled through emotions, surprise, anger, calculation. "Veronica, I thought you were resting." "I rested enough." She turned to the crowd. "I'm Veronica Chen, CEO of TechCore Industries. I understand you have concerns about our proposal." "We have more than concerns," Sham called out Tom Bradley from the hardware store. "We have experience. Castleton took a TechCore distribution center 10 years ago. Now their water table's contaminated, and the jobs disappeared to automation." "You're right," Veronica said, stunning everyone, including Webb. Castleton was a failure of corporate responsibility, one that happened before my time as CEO, but one I take responsibility for nonetheless. Empty words, someone shouted. Then let me offer more than words. She clicked a remote, changing Webb's presentation. This is a binding legal framework for the Millbrook facility. Environmental oversight by an independent board chosen by your town council. Mandatory local hiring for 70% of positions. Profit sharing that goes directly to town infrastructure. And if we violate any terms, the facility reverts to town ownership. The room buzzed. Webb stepped forward. Veronica, this hasn't been approved by the board. I'm the CEO. I'm approving it now. The board will never ratify this. Then there won't be a facility. She faced the crowd again. I know TechCore has failed communities before. I'm trying to change that, not with promises, but with legal guarantees. Why should we trust you? Jack asked, his voice carrying. She met his eyes. Because I've seen what happens when corporations operate without conscience. Because someone recently reminded me that integrity matters more than profit. Because, she paused, because I made a promise to keep promises. Emma stood on her chair. I trust her. Sit down, Jack said, but other voices joined his daughters. Let's see the full proposal. We want time to review it, to bring in our own lawyers. Veronica nodded. Take all the time you need. The proposal will be available at the library with legal support funded by TechCore to help you understand every clause. Webb pulled her aside, his whisper harsh but audible. You're destroying everything we've built. No, Marcus. I'm building something better. You're fired, by the way. The room erupted. Webb's face went purple. You can't. I can. I have the votes. Amazing what board members agree to when shown evidence of your embezzlement. She held up a flash drive. 6 facilities, Marcus. $15 million. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? You have no proof. Your assistant was very helpful once offered immunity. Security is already at your office. Webb lunged for the flash drive. Jack moved instinctively, putting himself between them. Webb's fist connected with Jack's jaw, sending him stumbling. The room exploded into chaos. Tom Bradley and others restrained Webb while someone called the police. Emma ran to Jack, checking his face with gentle fingers. Are you okay, Dad? I'm fine, sweetheart. Vicky knelt beside them, her professional mask cracking. Jack, I'm so sorry. Not your fault. It is. All of this is my fault. I let Webb operate unchecked for too long. The police arrived, taking statements, leading Webb away in handcuffs. The crowd dispersed slowly, everyone talking about what they'd witnessed. Vicky stood to leave, but Emma grabbed her hand. You came back. I promised. My concert is tomorrow. I know, I'll be there. She looked at Jack, something unspoken between them. Then she was gone, leaving father and daughter in the emptying community center. She kept her promise, Emma said. So far. You like her. Emma. It's okay to like her dad. Mom would want you to be happy. Jack pulled his daughter close, wondering when she'd gotten so wise. The concert was the next evening. Jack sat in the auditorium's third row, saving an empty seat despite himself. The lights dimmed. Children filed onto risers, Emma waving enthusiastically when she spotted him. The seat remained empty through the first 2 songs. Jack tried not to feel disappointed. She was a CEO. She had a company to run, a board to manage, a fired executive's mess to clean up. Then during Silent Night, someone slipped into the seat beside him. Vicky, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual armor. Sorry, she whispered. Board meeting ran long. You came. I promised. They watched Emma sing, her face luminous with joy. When she spotted Vicky, her smile could have powered the entire town. She loves you, Jack said quietly. I love her too. The admission hung between them, fragile and huge. After the concert, Emma dragged them both for ice cream despite the December cold. She chattered about school, about her upcoming science project, about everything and nothing. Vicky listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made Emma think. Are you staying in town? Emma asked through a mouthful of chocolate chip. I don't know. My life is in Boston. Your job is in Boston, Emma corrected. Your life could be anywhere. Vicky looked at Jack. It could be. The guest room is still available, he offered, then quickly added, until you figure things out. That could take a while. We're patient people. She smiled, not the CEO smile, but something softer, realer. I'll think about it. That night after Emma was asleep, they sat on the porch, despite the cold, sharing a blanket in silence. Webb posted bail, Vicky said eventually. He'll fight the charges. Are you worried? No, the evidence is solid, but he'll try to destroy me in the process. The board is already nervous. Will you lose your position? Maybe. Probably. She pulled the blanket tighter. I'm tired of fighting for a company that doesn't want to change. So change it or leave it. It's not that simple. TechCore is all I have. I've spent 15 years building my career there. 15 years is a long time. It's also not a lifetime. She was quiet for a moment. Your wife's scarf, I had it cleaned and framed. It's in my office. A reminder. Of what? That sometimes the most valuable things are the ones we give away. Jack thought about Sarah, about the life they'd planned that cancer stole, about the future he'd stopped imagining, about the woman beside him who quoted his dead wife's philosophy and made his daughter laugh. Stay, he said suddenly. Not in the guest room, not temporarily. Stay. She turned to him, eyes bright with tears. Jack, I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But Emma's right. Your life could be anywhere. Why not here? Because I'm CEO of a billion-dollar company. Because you hate everything I represent. Because this is a fairy tale, not real life. Then make it real. You said you want to change TechCore. Change it from here. Run it remotely. Build the data center. Right. Prove it can be done. Show the world a different way. And if I can't, if the board forces me out, then you'll figure out what's next. With us, if you want. She kissed him, then soft and surprising under the winter stars. When they pulled apart, both were crying. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I know hostile takeovers and profit margins. I don't know family dinners and school concerts. You're learning pretty fast. Jack, I should tell you, the night of the accident, it wasn't random. I was coming to find you. He pulled back. What? When I discovered what Webb did in Hartford, your name was in the files. I wanted to apologize to make it right somehow. I was driving around trying to work up courage to knock on your door. So the accident? Maybe fate? Maybe karma? Maybe just ice and poor timing? She laughed shakily. But I'm glad it happened. Is that terrible to say? No, Sarah would call it providence. Sarah sounds like she was wonderful. She was. She would have liked you. Even though I'm corporate enemy number one, especially because you're trying not to be. They stayed on the porch until the cold drove them inside, planning impossible futures that somehow felt possible. The next morning brought reality in the form of 37 emails, 14 missed calls, and 3 board members on Vicky's phone. I have to go back, she said over breakfast, at least for a few days. We understand, Jack said, though Emma's face fell. But I'll be back for Christmas, if that's okay. Christmas is in 5 days, Emma pointed out. Then I better hurry. She left that afternoon, but not before helping Emma with her homework and fixing a glitch in Jack's laptop. Domestic moments that felt like promises. Do you think she'll really come back? Emma asked that night. I do. How do you know? Because she hasn't broken a promise yet. The days crawled. Jack threw himself into preparing for Christmas tree shopping with Emma decorating cookies, wrapping presents. But the house felt incomplete. Then on Christmas Eve morning, a knock at the door. Vicky stood there with 2 suitcases and a resignation letter. You quit? Jack asked, stunned. No, but I relocated, permanently. The board agreed to let me run things remotely with quarterly visits to Boston. If the Millbrook facility succeeds, it becomes the model for all future development. And if it fails, then I'll have more time for school concerts. Emma barreled into Vicky's arms. You're really staying. I'm really staying. That Christmas was different from the 3 that came before. Not a replacement for what was lost, but something new growing in the spaces grief had carved. Vicky learned their tradition stockings before presents, Pancakes and pajamas, afternoon walk in the woods. She added her own Chinese dumplings for dinner, a gratitude circle before bed, hot chocolate with cayenne pepper. "This is the best Christmas ever," Emma declared, falling asleep between them on the couch, new books scattered everywhere. Jack met Vicky's eyes over his daughter's head. "It really is." "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving me. In every way a person can be saved. Thank you for not giving up when I pushed you away." Morrison's stubbornness is contagious. They laughed quietly, careful not to wake Emma. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing Millbrook in fresh possibility. The weeks after Christmas passed in a blur of adjustments and revelations. Vicky had converted Jack's rarely used dining room into a command center, 3 monitors, endless video calls, and the constant hum of business being conducted at the highest levels. Yet somehow she never missed dinner, never missed Emma's bedtime stories, never made them feel like they came second to TechCore. "How do you do it?" Jack asked one evening in mid-January, watching her seamlessly transition from firing a supplier for contract violations to helping Emma with fractions. "Same way you rebuilt your life after everything fell apart," she said, checking Emma's homework. "One decision at a time, keeping what matters most in focus." Emma beamed at getting all her math problems right, then scampered off to practice piano. The discordant notes filled the house. She really wasn't very good yet, but Vicky smiled at each wrong note like it was a symphony. "The board meeting is tomorrow," she said quietly once Emma was absorbed in her practice. "About the Millbrook facility. Webb's been lobbying against it, even under indictment. Are you worried?" "I should be. But sitting here in this house with you and Emma, the worst they can do is fire me, and that doesn't scare me anymore." Jack moved behind her chair, hands on her shoulders. "It should scare you a little. You've worked your whole life for this position." "No, I've worked my whole life for what I thought this position meant, power to make real change. But maybe real change doesn't happen in boardrooms." She tilted her head back to look at him. "Maybe it happens in small towns, one promise at a time." The next morning, Vicky dressed in her armor, a black suit that meant business, her grandmother's jade pendant for luck. Jack caught her pacing the kitchen at 5 a.m., practicing her presentation. "You'll be brilliant," he said, pouring coffee. "I'm about to ask the board to approve a facility with half the profit margin of our usual builds. Webb's painted me as emotional, compromised, weak. You're none of those things. I'm all of those things. But they're not flaws, they're what make me human. The board's forgotten what that means." Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Are you fighting the bad guys today, Vicky?" "In a way, sweetheart." "Then you need this." Emma pulled something from behind her back, a crayon drawing of Vicky as a superhero standing between a small town and a monster labeled Greed. Vicky's eyes filled with tears. "This is perfect. Can I take it with me?" "It's for luck. Daddy says you make your own luck, but I think a little help doesn't hurt." 3 hours later, Vicky faced 12 board members via video screen, Emma's drawing propped beside her laptop. The boardroom in Boston was visible on her main monitor, marble and mahogany power crystallized into architecture. "This is a regular Veronica Pam," Richard Blackstone, the board chairman, began. "Remote presentations for something this significant. With respect, Richard, what's irregular is TechCore's history of community exploitation. What I'm proposing is revolutionary, a sustainable model that ensures long-term profitability through community partnership. Webb's report suggests you've been emotionally compromised by your accident," another board member interjected, "that you're making decisions based on personal attachments rather than fiscal responsibility. My attachment is to TechCore's future. We're facing increasing regulation, community resistance, and reputational damage from our past practices. Continue on our current path and we'll be the next corporate cautionary tale." She clicked through her presentation, detailed projections, risk assessments, long-term valuations. But what made the difference was her passion, the conviction that came from believing in something beyond quarterly earnings. The Millbrook model isn't just about one facility, she argued. It's about transforming TechCore's relationship with every community we enter. Yes, initial profits are lower, but sustainability, community goodwill, and regulatory compliance save us billions in legal fees, protests, and abandoned projects. This is idealistic nonsense. Webb's voice came through a phone line he was participating despite his legal troubles. Corporations exist to generate profit, not play social worker. Corporations exist because society allows them to. Vicky shot back. That permission is revocable. Ask the tobacco companies. Ask Big Oil. Ask every industry that prioritized short-term profit over long-term survival. The debate raged for 3 hours. Jack texted periodic encouragement. Emma sent a photo from school of her science class watching a live stream about renewable energy, Vicky's influence spreading even there. Finally, Richard called for a vote. All in favor of the Millbrook proposal as presented, 7 hands rose, a majority but barely. Motion passes, Richard said, though his expression suggested displeasure. Veronica, you have 1 year to prove this model. If Millbrook doesn't meet projections, we'll revisit your position. Understood. And Veronica, we expect you back in Boston. This remote arrangement is temporary. We'll see. She ended the call and immediately dialed Jack. We did it. 7 votes. That's amazing. Emma will be thrilled. It's not over. They gave me a year probation, essentially. If Millbrook fails, it won't fail. We won't let it. You didn't think you were doing this alone, did you? This is our town. We'll make it work. That evening, they celebrated with pizza and Emma's favorite ice cream. But Jack noticed Vicky's distraction, the way she kept checking her phone. What's wrong? Webb. He's been too quiet. 3 hours since the vote, and nothing, no angry emails, no threats. It's not like him. Her instincts proved right. The next morning, Jack woke to find Vicky in the kitchen laptop, open face pale. He leaked everything, she said. Every email I've sent about the Hartford cover-up, but edited to make it look like I was part of it, like I only turned on him to save myself. Jack read over her shoulder. The technology blog posts were damning, the edited emails convincing. The comments section was brutal, calling for her resignation, SEC investigation, criminal charges. This is fabricated. You can prove that, right? Eventually, but by then the damage is done. The board will have no choice but to remove me. She closed the laptop. I should have seen this coming. So we fight back. How? He's better at this game. Emma appeared already dressed for school. What game? Jack hesitated, but Vicky believed in truth. Someone is telling lies about me to hurt the data center project. That's mean. Why would they do that? Because some people care more about winning than what's right. Emma considered this. Mrs. Patterson says when someone lies about you, the best weapon is the truth, and friends who know the real you. Your teacher is wise, Vicky said, but her smile was sad. Emma left for school, but not before giving Vicky an extra-long hug. Jack made breakfast while Vicky fielded calls, lawyers, board members, reporters. Each conversation chipped away at her composure. Maybe I should just resign, she said after a particularly brutal call with Richard Blackstone. Save everyone the drama. Is that what you want? I want to build something good here. I want to prove business doesn't have to be predatory. She looked at him. I want the life we're starting to build. Then fight for it. I don't know how. Webb's held all the cards from the beginning. Jack's phone rang. Tom Bradley from the hardware store. Jack, you need to see the news. Channel 7. They turned on the television to find Marcus Webb being arrested. Again. This time, federal agents were involved. Following an anonymous tip, the FBI has arrested Marcus Webb on charges of corporate espionage, embezzlement, and attempted murder. Sources indicate evidence was provided showing Webb's tampering with CEO Veronica Chen's vehicle, leading to her near-fatal accident 6 weeks ago. Vicky sank onto the couch. Attempted murder. Her phone rang. Richard Blackstone. Veronica, I assume you're watching. Yes, sir. The FBI contacted us an hour ago. They have Webb's original emails proving he doctored the ones released this morning. They also have evidence of the brake tampering embezzlement, and he paused. A contract with a hitman dated 3 days ago. For you. Jack grabbed Vicky's hand as she swayed. We owe you an apology, Richard continued, and our full support. The Millbrook project is yours. Run it however you see fit. Who provided the FBI with the evidence? Anonymous source. Though they did leave a message for you, promise kept. After the call, Vicky sat in stunned silence. Jack held her while she processed everything. Someone saved my life. Again. Any idea who? None. Webb had enemies, but none who'd take this risk. She pulled out her laptop, diving into TechCore's secured servers. Wait. Someone accessed Webb's private files 3 days ago. Someone with executive clearance, but that's impossible. What? The access code belongs to Charles Chen, my mentor. He died 2 years ago. Could someone have stolen his codes? No, they're biometric, unless... She started typing furiously. Oh my God. What? Charles had a son, David. He was TechCore's head of cybersecurity until he quit 5 years ago after a fight with Webb. He'd still have his father's biometric data. They were identical in certain markers, a genetic quirk. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your father would be proud. The company is in good hands now. Make it what he dreamed. D. He risked everything to expose Webb, Jack said, to save the company his father built, to save me. She was crying now. Charles brought me into TechCore. He believed in ethical business and doing well by doing good. Webb corrupted everything after Charles died. Now you can restore it. We can restore it, she corrected. I want you involved in the Millbrook project, officially, head of environmental compliance and community liaison. Vicky, I need someone I trust, someone who won't let me compromise what matters, someone who understands both the community and the industry. I haven't worked in engineering for 3 years. You never stopped being an engineer. You just started building different things. She gestured toward his workshop where a rocking chair he'd made sat waiting for delivery. You build trust, relationships, furniture that lasts generations. That's what TechCore needs. Before he could respond, Emma burst through the door home early from school. There's a big black car outside and men in suits. Are we in trouble? They looked outside to find Richard Blackstone himself emerging from a limousine along with 2 other board members. Did you know he was coming? Jack asked. No. Vicky smoothed her clothes, tried to look professional despite wearing jeans and one of Jack's flannel shirts. Richard knocked a courtesy since he could have just barged in. Jack answered, Mr. Morrison, I'm Richard Blackstone, TechCore's board chairman. May we come in? The 3 executives looked absurd in the modest living room, their $1,000 shoes on Sarah's worn carpet. But Richard's expression was humble, almost contrite. Veronica, we need to discuss the future. If you're here to demand I return to Boston, actually we're here to negotiate your new contract. The board held an emergency meeting. Unanimous vote, you have full autonomy on the Millbrook project and any future community integrated facilities. Your remote arrangement is permanent if you choose. And shit, he pulled out a document. Your salary is doubled. Why? Because in 6 weeks you've generated more positive press than we've had in a decade. Because our stock is up 12% on news of the community partnership model. Because... He looked uncomfortable. Because Webb had dirt on all of us. Nothing illegal but embarrassing, compromising. We let him operate out of fear. You freed us from that. I didn't expose Webb. That was... We know about David Chen. He sent the board evidence of Webb's crimes, but also a simple message, support Veronica or I release everything. Not about our indiscretions, but about every creative accounting measure, every regulatory sidestep, every corner cut. Legal technically, but devastating if public. He's blackmailing you into being ethical. Jack couldn't hide his amusement. Forcing us to be what we always claimed to be, Richard corrected. Ms. Chen Veronica, you have a guardian angel with very sharp teeth. What does the board want in return? Success. Make Millbrook work. Prove this model is viable. Give us a path forward that doesn't end in congressional hearings or consumer boycotts. Vicky looked at Jack, then at Emma, who was listening from the stairs. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them. Jack Morrison joins as project co-director, equal authority on all Millbrook decisions. Richard looked at Jack appraisingly. The whistleblower who exposed Hartford. That's actually brilliant. Proof of our commitment to transparency. Mr. Morrison, would you accept... Jack thought of Sarah, of the life they'd planned before TechCore destroyed it. Now, TechCore was offering him a chance to rebuild not just his career, but the company itself. I accept. Emma cheered from the stairs. Richard smiled a real smile, not corporate polish. There's more, Vicky continued. Environmental impact studies by truly independent firms. Community profit sharing starting immediately, not after 5 years. And a memorial scholarship in Sarah Morrison's name for local students pursuing environmental science. Jack's throat tightened. Vicky hadn't discussed this with him. All acceptable, Richard said. Anything else? Yes. You stay for dinner. I'm sorry. You came to our home, in our community. Stay for dinner. Meet the people your decisions affect. Remember what it's like to be human instead of a corporate entity. Richard looked at his colleagues, then shrugged. We'd be honored. But what followed was surreal billionaire executives eating Emma's favorite mac and cheese, listening to her explain her science project helping clear the table. Richard. It turned out had a granddaughter Emma's age. The other executives had families, hobbies, lives beyond TechCore that Webb had made them forget. This is what you're really selling, Richard said as they prepared to leave. Connection, community. The idea that business doesn't have to be soulless. It's not an idea, Vicky corrected. It's a practice. Daily choices to prioritize people alongside profit. Webb would call you naive. Webb's under federal indictment, so his opinion carries less weight than it used to. Richard laughed. Actually laughed. I haven't felt this optimistic about TechCore in years. Don't let us down, Veronica. We won't. After they left, the three of them sat on the porch, Emma wedged between the adults watching stars appear in the clear winter sky. Did we just win? Emma asked. We won a battle, Vicky said. The war for corporate ethics is ongoing. That sounds exhausting, Emma said. It is. But we have secret weapons. What weapons? Mac and cheese, math homework, piano practice, all the normal, beautiful things that remind us why the fight matters. And each other, Jack added. Especially each other, Vicky agreed. The next weeks were a whirlwind. Ground broke on the Millbrook facility with unprecedented transparency. Every permit public, every environmental report available online, every community concern addressed in town halls. Jack and Vicky worked as a team, her corporate experience balancing his community knowledge. You're good at this, but she told him one evening, reviewing his proposal for local contractor partnerships. I forgot how much I missed it. Not the corporate politics, but the actual engineering. Building something that matters. Sarah would be proud. She would. She'd also probably laugh at the irony me working for TechCore. Not for, with. Partners remember. The distinction mattered. Every decision was collaborative, every policy shaped by community input. It was exhausting, sometimes frustrating, but it was working. The first crisis came in March. A subcontractor was caught dumping concrete waste near the watershed, exactly the kind of violation Jack had exposed at Hartford. But this time, the response was different. We fire them immediately, Vicky said in the emergency meeting. The delay will cost us millions, the project manager argued. The damage to our credibility would cost more, Jack countered. We promise transparency. That means admitting mistakes and fixing them publicly. They held a town meeting that night, apologizing for the oversight, explaining their response, inviting community members to join the oversight committee. Instead of anger, they got appreciation for the honesty. No one's perfect, Mrs. Chen from the library said. But you're trying. That's what matters. The fired subcontractor was Webb's last gambit. He'd paid them to violate regulations, hoping to sabotage the project. But his plan backfired. The community's trust in Jack and Vicky's leadership only grew. By April, the facility was ahead of schedule. Employment applications flooded in from locals eager for good jobs that wouldn't disappear. The environmental impact was minimal, actually improving some areas through watershed restoration projects. We're doing it, Vicky said one evening, looking at the progress reports. You sound surprised. Part of me expected to fail, to prove Webb right about corporate nature being unchangeable. Nature isn't fixed, Jack said. Sarah taught me that in her garden. With the right care, anything can grow differently. Emma ran in from outside where she'd been helping plant trees as part of the facility's green barrier. "Vicky, Dad, come see. The first flowers are blooming." They followed her outside to where crocuses pushed through the last snow purple and white against the brown earth. Such small things, but promises of spring, of renewal of life, continuing despite winter's attempts to stop it. "It's beautiful," Vicky said, but she was looking at Jack and Emma, not the flowers. That night after Emma was asleep, Jack found Vicky in the workshop. She was sanding a piece of wood badly, but determinedly. "What are you making?" "I wanted to try. You make it look easy." "It's not, but nothing worth doing is." She set down the sandpaper. "I love you." The words hung in the workshop air, mixing with sawdust and possibility. "I love you too," Jack said. "But you knew that." "I hoped. But hoping and knowing are different things." "What made you know I'm—" "You trusted me with your daughter, with your town, with your wife's memory. Those aren't things you give to someone you don't love." He kissed her then in the workshop where he'd rebuilt his life one piece at a time. Now they were building something together, not just a facility or a relationship, but a future neither had imagined possible. "Move in officially," he said. "Stop pretending the guest room is where you sleep." "What will people say?" "That the CEO fell for the whistleblower. It's a good story. The best stories are true ones." "Then let's make it true. All of it. The facility, the community partnership, us." That's a lot of pressure on one relationship. "We've handled worse. You survived a car crash. I survived corporate destruction. Emma survived losing her mother. We're all stronger than we think. Together, we're stronger than that. Together, we're unstoppable." May brought unexpected challenges. Other TechCore facilities faced protests, their communities demanding the Millbrook model. The board panicked, seeing profit margins shrink across the company. "They want to scale back," Vicky told Jack after a tense board call. "Limit the community partnership to Millbrook only. That defeats the entire purpose." "I know. Richard's supportive, but others are wavering. So we prove it works, fast." They accelerated everything, hiring construction community programs. Jack worked 18-hour days managing contractors and environmental compliance. Vicky handled the corporate side while running job training programs for locals. Emma became the unofficial mascot, her artwork decorating the construction site barriers. Then Webb made his final move. Despite being in federal custody, he'd managed to coordinate with disgruntled board members. They called for a vote of no confidence in Vicky's leadership. "I have to go to Boston," she said, packing for the emergency board meeting. "This is it. Either they support the new direction, or I'm out." "We're going with you," Jack said. "Jack, we're a family. We face this together." The drive to Boston was quiet. Emma asleep in the back seat. Vicky stared out the window, watching Vermont give way to Massachusetts. "What if we lose?" she asked. "Then we go home and find another way to change the world." That's simple what the important things usually are. TechCore's Boston headquarters was a glass monument to corporate power. Emma held both their hands as they walked through the marble lobby. "It's so cold," she whispered. "Buildings reflect their values," Vicky said. "That's why we're changing those values." The boardroom was full, all 12 members, plus legal counsel, recording secretaries, the corporate machinery in full display. Jack and Emma sat in the observation area while Vicky took her place at the table. The attack began immediately. 3 board members presented their case: cost overruns, delayed returns, shareholder concerns. They painted the Millbrook model as Vicky's pet project, unsustainable and naive. Then Vicky stood. She didn't present slides or financial projections. Instead, she pulled out Emma's drawing, the one of her as a superhero fighting greed. "An 8-year-old understands what we've forgotten," she began. "Business isn't about numbers, it's about people. Every decision we make affects real lives and real communities." She talked about Jack, about Sarah's death after they lost insurance, about Emma growing up without a mother because TechCore prioritized profit over truth. She talked about second chances, about redemption, about the possibility of being both successful and ethical. The Millbrook model isn't just working, it's thriving. Applications are up 400%. Community approval is at 89%. Our environmental impact is negative. We're actually improving the ecosystem. And profits, while lower initially, project to exceed traditional models within 3 years through reduced legal costs, community goodwill, and employee retention. Pretty words, one board member said. But our shareholders are people too. They have children who'll inherit the world we're building. Do we want to leave them wealth built on exploitation or a model for sustainable success? Richard Blackstone stood. I move to table the no confidence vote. Second, another member said. But the third dissenter wasn't done. This is emotional manipulation. We need a CEO who thinks like a businessman, not a social worker. Then you need a different company, Vicky said, because I'm done pretending those are separate roles. Every business decision is a social decision. Every profit impacts people. We can choose to acknowledge that or continue pretending corporations exist in a vacuum. Call the vote, Richard said. All in favor of retaining Veronica Chen as CEO. Hands rose slowly. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, a clear majority. Motion to remove fails, Richard announced. Furthermore, I move to expand the Millbrook model to all new TechCore facilities. The vote was closer 7-5, but it passed. Vicky sagged with relief. Jack and Emma rushed to her group hug in the middle of the boardroom. You did it, Jack whispered. We did it. This is still a business, one dissenting member said coldly. Not a family reunion. Emma looked up at him with 8-year-old directness. Why can't it be both? The man had no answer. They drove home that night. Vicky's position, secure the Millbrook model, approved company-wide. Emma chattered about the adventure, about the tall buildings and serious faces, and how Vicky had stood up to all of them. You were like a real superhero, she said. No, sweetheart. Superheroes work alone. I had you and your dad. That makes me something better. What's better than a superhero? Someone with a family to fight for. June arrived with the facility's first phase completion. The opening ceremony drew hundreds of local state officials, media, curious about TechCore's transformation. Jack stood with Vicky as she cut the ribbon, Emma holding both their hands. This facility represents a new chapter, Vicky said to the crowd. Not just for TechCore, but for how business and community can coexist. Every job created, every environmental protection implemented, every profit shared, it all stems from one simple principle: we're all in this together. Applause thundered across the Vermont hills. But the best moment came later at the community barbecue. Jack watched Vicky flip burgers beside Tom Bradley, laughing at his jokes. Emma ran with local kids, no longer the sad girl who'd lost her mother, but a joy-filled child who'd gained a future. You happy? Jack asked Vicky as the sun set. Happy doesn't cover it. I'm whole. For the first time in my life, I'm whole. Good, because I have something to ask you. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring he'd made himself titanium from reclaimed aerospace parts inset with Vermont granite and a small diamond that had been Sarah's. Veronica Chen, will you marry me? Here in front of our community, will you officially join this family you've already become part of? Emma appeared beside them, bouncing with excitement. She'd known for weeks helped design the ring, kept the secret despite nearly bursting. Say yes, she shouted. Please say yes. Vicky was crying, laughing, nodding. Yes, of course, yes. The crowd erupted. The CEO and the whistleblower, the corporate queen and the small-town engineer, the woman who'd lost herself in ambition, and the man who'd found himself in loss, all those contradictions resolved in a simple yes. Richard Blackstone, who'd stayed for the ceremony, shook his head in wonder. This is either the best corporate story ever or the end of business as we know it. Boastful, Tom Bradley said, clapping him on the back. Definitely both. As night fell over Millbrook, the new facility glowing softly with solar-powered lights, 3 people stood together looking at what they'd built. Not just a building or a business model, but a bridge between worlds that had seemed incompatible. What now? Emma asked. Now we plan a wedding, Vicky said. And run a revolutionary business model, Jack added. And live happily ever after, Emma asked hopefully. No, Vicky said, causing Emma's face to fall until she continued. Happily ever after is for fairy tales. We get something better, happily ever forward, always growing, always building, always together. That sounds harder than fairy tales. The best things always are. They walked home through streets they'd helped transform past businesses thriving from facility contracts under stars that had witnessed every moment of their unlikely story. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, wedding planning and quarterly reports, community needs, and corporate demands. But tonight, they were simply a family going home, proof that sometimes the most impossible things were actually inevitable, waiting for brave enough people to make them real. In the distance, the TechCore facility hummed with quiet efficiency, its lights reflecting off the pond, where Jack had once taught Emma to skip stones, where Vicky had learned that some things mattered more than money, where a community had chosen to trust again. It wasn't an ending. It was a transformation. And in the morning, they'd continue building one promise, one decision, one day at a time. The wedding planning started the very next morning, with Emma spreading bridal magazines across the kitchen table, while Vicky fielded calls from Tokyo and Jack reviewed environmental reports. This was their life now, the personal and professional woven so tightly together that separating them would have been impossible. "I think we should have the wedding at the facility," Emma announced, holding up a picture of an industrial chic ceremony. "Emma, sweetheart, most people don't get married at data centers," Jack said, though he was smiling. "We're not most people," Emma countered with 8-year-old logic that was hard to argue with. Vicky looked up from her laptop where she was managing a crisis at the Singapore office. "Actually, that's not a terrible idea. The community garden we built would be beautiful in September." "You want to get married at TechCore?" Jack asked. "I want to get married where our new life began, where we proved that impossible things can happen." She paused her video call. "Unless you'd prefer something more traditional," Jack thought about Sarah, about their small church wedding with 50 guests and her grandmother's cake recipe. That had been perfect for them. But this was different, not better or worse, just different. "The garden it is," he said. "But I'm not wearing a suit." "Deal, but you have to wear shoes." "Negotiable." Emma cheered already, sketching wedding decorations on her homework. The normalcy of it, planning a wedding while running a billion-dollar company and raising a child, should have been overwhelming. Instead, it felt like the life they were meant to live. That afternoon brought unexpected visitors. David Chen stood at their door looking like a younger version of his father, the same keen eyes, the same slight smile that suggested he knew more than he was saying. "Ms. Chen," he said formally. "Mr. Morrison, I hope I'm not intruding." "David?" Vicky pulled him into a hug that surprised them both. "You saved my life." "You saved everything." "I saved my father's legacy," he corrected, but returned the embrace. "You're the one making it matter." They sat in the living room, Emma eyeing the stranger with curious suspicion, until David pulled out a tablet and showed her a game he'd designed. Within minutes, she was absorbed, leaving the adults to talk. "Why now?" Vicky asked. "Why reveal yourself?" "Because Webb's trial starts next week. I'm testifying. Figured you should know your guardian angel before he becomes public record. The FBI said you've been gathering evidence for years. Since Dad died. I knew Webb was dirty, but proving it required patience. When you started pushing for reform, I knew it was time. You could have just sent the evidence. Why risk exposing yourself?" David glanced at Emma, who was completely engrossed in his game. "My father believed in family, in legacy being more than money or power. He would have loved what you're building here, not just the business model, but this." He gestured around the lived-in room, toys mixed with spreadsheets, wedding magazines beside quarterly reports. "He was a good man," Vicky said softly. "He was. And he saw that in you even when you were just a junior analyst with big dreams." David pulled out an envelope aged and sealed. "He left this for you, to be delivered when you finally stood up to the board. Took longer than he expected, but then Webb was better at manipulation than anyone realized." Vicky's hand shook as she opened the letter. Charles Chen's handwriting was still precise, even though he'd been dying when he wrote it. "My dear Veronica," she read aloud. "If you're reading this, you finally found the courage I always knew you possessed. The company I built became something I never intended, cold, calculating, cruel. But you have the power to change that, not through force or fear, but through exactly what makes you different from men like Webb. You care, you connect. You see business as human endeavor, not abstract numbers. That's not weakness, it's the future. Build that future. Build it with people who share your values. Build it for the next generation. And remember, profit without purpose is just greed with better PR. Make TechCore purposeful again, with love and faith. Charles. She was crying by the end, David and Jack both offering tissues. Emma looked up from the game. Why is everyone sad? Not sad, sweetheart, Vicky managed. Grateful. Sometimes grateful looks like sad. Grown-ups are weird, Emma concluded, returning to her game. David stayed for dinner, fitting into their chaotic evening routine as if he'd always been there. He helped Emma with her coding homework, apparently third grade, included basic programming now, while Jack and Vicky cleaned up. I want to offer you a position, Vicky said suddenly. Chief Technology and Ethics Officer. New role reporting directly to me. Ethics. David raised an eyebrow. Every technology decision has ethical implications. Every algorithm affects lives. I want someone who understands that intersection. You're asking the son of TechCore's founder to be your corporate conscience. I'm asking someone who spent 5 years gathering evidence to save a company he didn't even work for anymore. That's the kind of dedication to principles we need. David looked at Emma, who was proudly showing him her science fair ribbon. I left TechCore because it was destroying families. If you're really going to change that, we are. We have. Look around. This is what TechCore leadership looks like now. Messy, complicated, real. Then yes, but I work remotely, from Vermont. You'll fit right in, Jack said. We're collecting corporate refugees who prefer small towns to corner offices. The wedding planning intensified as Webb's trial began. Vicky testified via video link, calmly detailing years of cover-ups and corruption, while Emma was at school and Jack held her hand off camera. Webb's lawyers tried to paint her as a scorned subordinate, but the evidence was overwhelming. He tried to have me killed because I threatened his profit margins, Vicky said clearly. That's not business. That's sociopathy with a good suit. The media loved it. The CEO taking down corporate corruption while planning a wedding and revolutionizing business practices. It was the kind of story that wrote itself. You're famous, Emma told Vicky one evening, showing her a newspaper article with her picture. Infamous is more accurate. What's the difference? Famous is when people know you for good reasons. Infamous is when they know you for complicated ones. I think you're famous, Emma decided. You saved Daddy's heart. Jack looked up from wedding venue contracts. Emma, it's true. You were so sad after Mom died. You smiled, but it didn't reach your eyes. Now your whole face smiles again. Out of the mouths of babes, Jack thought pulling both his girls close, because that's what they were, now his girls, his family, his reason for believing in the future again. The trial verdict came down in July, Webb guilty on all counts, facing 30 years in federal prison. The other conspirators got lesser sentences but were finished in corporate America. TechCore's stock initially dropped, then soared, as investors realized the company had purged its corruption. We did it, Richard Blackstone called to congratulate. The board is fully behind you now. The Millbrook model is being studied by Harvard Business School. You've changed everything. We've started changing things, Vicky corrected. Real change takes generations. Speaking of which, when's the wedding the board wants to attend? September 21st, and Richard. It's a small ceremony, family and close friends only. I understand. But you're invited. You stood by us when it mattered. The old executive's voice roughened with emotion. I'd be honored. August brought a heat wave and a new challenge. Other companies, seeing TechCore's success, tried to poach Vicky with astronomical offers. One afternoon, Jack came home to find her staring at a contract from a Silicon Valley giant. $40 million signing bonus, she said quietly. Full autonomy, double TechCore's resources. You're considering it. No. Maybe. I don't know. She rubbed her eyes. They want me to replicate the Millbrook model globally. The impact could be enormous. But it would mean moving to California, leaving everything we've built here. Emma, who'd been eavesdropping from the stairs, burst into the room. We can't leave. This is home. This is where Mom is buried. This is where we became a family. Emma! Jack started, but she was already running to her room, slamming the door. Vicky started to follow, but Jack stopped her. Let me. He found Emma curled on her bed, clutching the stuffed bear Sarah had made her. We're not leaving, sweetheart. But the money isn't worth what we have here. Vicky knows that. She just needed to remember. How do you know? Because she didn't take the offer immediately. Because she came home to discuss it. Because she loves us more than any job. More than $40 million. Money can't buy what we have. It can't buy Emma's laughter, or Vermont sunsets, or the way Vicky looks at us like we're her whole world. That's what you say to make me feel better. No, that's what I believe. Want to know a secret? I got an offer too. Engineering firm in Boston wants me to run their environmental division. Triple what TechCore pays. Emma's eyes widened. Are you taking it? What do you think? No, because we're a family. Families stick together. Exactly. They went back downstairs to find Vicky on the phone. Thank you for the offer, but I'm declining. My life is here. My work is here. My family is here. Those aren't negotiable. She hung up and looked at them. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have even considered it. You should consider every opportunity, Jack said. That's what smart people do. Then they choose what matters most. You two matter most. This life matters most. Emma launched herself at Vicky. Promise you'll never leave. I promise I'll never choose a job over you. How's that good enough? They spent the evening working on wedding preparations, the Silicon Valley offer forgotten. But Jack noticed Vicky seemed lighter, as if considering and rejecting the offer had confirmed something essential about her priorities. September arrived with perfect Vermont weather. The wedding preparations kicked into high gear, with the whole town participating. Mrs. Chen from the library organized the flowers. Tom Bradley built an arbor from reclaimed wood. Emma practiced her flower girl duties with military precision. 3 days before the wedding, another crisis. The Tokyo office had a massive data breach potentially compromising millions of users. Vicky had to fly out immediately. I'll be back in time, she promised, packing frantically. The wedding won't happen without me. You better not leave me at the altar, Jack teased, but worry crept in. Never. David's going with me. We'll fix this and be back by tomorrow night. But tomorrow night came and went. The breach was worse than expected, requiring Vicky and David to work around the clock. Jack fielded worried calls from wedding guests while Emma grew increasingly anxious. She's not coming back, Emma said the night before the wedding, just like Mom didn't come back from the hospital. This is different, Em. Vicky's coming home. How do you know? Before he could answer, his phone rang. Vicky's face appeared on video, exhausted but smiling with Tokyo's skyline behind her. We fixed it, taking the company jet now. I'll be there if I have to parachute in. Vicky. Emma grabbed the phone. You promised, and I keep my promises. Sleep tight, sweetheart. When you wake up, I'll be home. What if the plane crashes? What if there's another storm? Then I'll swim, I'll walk, I'll crawl if I have to. Nothing stops me from marrying your dad tomorrow. Jack took the phone back. Just get here safe. We'll wait as long as it takes. I love you both so much. We love you too. Now stop being romantic and get on that plane. She laughed, blew them a kiss, and signed off. Jack barely slept, checking flight trackers and weather reports. At 6 a.m., he heard a car in the driveway. Vicky stood there, still in her business clothes from Tokyo, looking exhausted but radiant. Told you I'd make it. He kissed her long and deep, not caring that she tasted like airplane coffee and exhaustion. Don't you know it's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding? We've had all our bad luck already. Today is nothing but good. Emma appeared in her pajamas, shrieking with joy. You're here. You're really here. Where else would I be? We have a wedding to get to. The ceremony was scheduled for sunset. The morning flew by in preparations. Vicky's dress was simple, elegant, but practical like her. Jack wore his only suit, the one from Sarah's funeral, but today it didn't feel heavy with grief. It felt like armor for a new beginning. The facility's community garden had been transformed. Fairy lights wound through the vegetables and flowers. Chairs were arranged in a circle rather than rows symbolizing the community they'd built. The data center hummed quietly in the background, its solar panels glinting in the afternoon sun. Guests arrived throughout the day. Richard Blackstone looked uncomfortable in casual clothes, but genuinely happy. Tom Bradley brought his whole family. Mrs. Chen wore her finest dress. David Chen stood as Vicky's man of honor, while Jack's brother flew in from Seattle to be his best man. But the most unexpected guest arrived an hour before the ceremony. Marcus Webb's former assistant, Patricia Wells, approached nervously. "I know I'm not welcome." "You testified against Webb," Vicky said. "That took courage." "It took too long. I knew what he was doing and stayed silent out of fear. But seeing you fight, seeing you change things, I wanted to apologize. And to give you this." She handed over a small box. Inside was Charles Chen's watch, the one he'd worn every day until his death. Webb took it from Charles's office, called it a trophy. "I thought you should have it." Vicky's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. Would you stay for the ceremony?" Patricia's shocked expression made Jack love Vicky even more. This was who she was, someone who could forgive, who could see redemption in anyone willing to change. "I'd be honored." As the sun began its descent, casting golden light through the garden, the ceremony began. Emma walked first, scattering flower petals with scientific precision. Then Vicky appeared, David beside her, walking toward Jack with the confidence of someone who'd found her home. The local minister, Reverend Williams, kept the ceremony simple. But when it came time for vows, Vicky and Jack had written their own. Jack went first. "Vicky, you crashed into my life literally and figuratively. You were supposed to be everything I stood against: corporate power, wealth, without conscience, the system that destroyed my first chance at happiness. Instead, you became proof that people can change, that companies can have hearts, that second chances are real. You gave Emma a mother figure when I thought she'd never have one. You gave me a reason to believe in the future again. I promise to support your dreams, challenge your assumptions, and remind you every day that you're more than your job title. You're the woman who chose love over $40 million. You're the CEO who serves mac and cheese to billionaires. You're the mother who keeps promises no matter what. You're my miracle, and I promise to spend every day earning that miracle." Vicky was crying before he finished, not caring that her makeup was running. "Jack, you saved my life that snowy night, but not the way you think. Yes, you pulled me from a crashed car, but more importantly, you pulled me from a crashed existence. I had everything society says matters: power, money, influence, and none of what actually does. You and Emma taught me that success means nothing if you achieve it alone. That integrity matters more than income. That a child's laughter is worth more than any board's approval. You trusted me when I didn't trust myself. You fought for me when I was ready to give up. You showed me that strength isn't about never falling, it's about who helps you stand back up. I promise to stand with you through every storm, to choose this family over any opportunity, to be Emma's bonus mom with all the joy and responsibility that brings, to never let corporate life make me forget what real life looks like. You're not my second chance at love, you're my first chance at understanding what love really means." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Even Richard Blackstone was dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. "The rings?" Reverend Williams asked. Emma stepped forward, proudly holding the pillow with two simple bands, titanium and Vermont granite, designed by Jack, inscribed with coordinates, the spot where he'd found her that snowy night. "By the power vested in me by the state of Vermont and the grace of God, I now pronounce you husband and wife." They kissed as the sun touched the mountains, as their community cheered as Emma wrapped her arms around both of them. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reverend Williams announced, "I present Mr. and Mrs. Morrison Chen." They'd hyphenated naturally. Everything about their relationship was about balance, partnership, equality. The reception was in the facility's main hall, transformed with Emma's artwork and community donations. No fancy caterers, everyone brought dishes potluck style. Tom Bradley manned the barbecue. Mrs. Chen had made her famous dumplings. Even Richard Blackstone had contributed, hiring a local band that played everything from classical to country. "This is the strangest corporate event I've ever attended," Richard told Jack during the father-daughter dance. Emma had insisted on dancing with both Jack and Vicky, simultaneously creating a laughing, stumbling circle. "It's not a corporate event, it's a family celebration." "That's what's strange. In 40 years of business, I've never seen the professional and personal blend like this. It shouldn't work." "But it does. It does." You've all taught an old executive new tricks. Thank you for that. Thank you for taking the chance on us. Richard watched Vicky laugh as Emma stood on her feet, letting her new stepmother waltz her around. She's different now. Better. More whole. We all are. The party lasted past midnight, but eventually guests drifted home. Jack and Vicky's honeymoon was simple, a weekend at a local inn, while Emma stayed with Jack's brother. They talked about Paris or Hawaii, but realized what they really wanted was time together, without laptops or crisis calls. No regrets? Jack asked as they watched stars from their room's balcony. About which part marrying you, staying in Vermont, turning down $40 million? Any of it, all of it. No regrets. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I want to be. Even with the Tokyo crisis and Webb's trial and the board's pressure, especially with all that, it's real, it's complicated, it's life. She leaned against him. I spent so many years trying to avoid messiness, thinking success meant control. But the best things are messy. Love is messy. Family is messy. Changing corporate culture is incredibly messy. You sound happy about that. I am. Mess means we're trying. Perfect is static. Messy is alive. They returned to find Emma had redecorated the house with a welcome home banner and drawings of their new family. David Chen was there too, having become an unofficial uncle figure. How was the honeymoon? He asked. Perfect, Vicky said. Absolutely perfectly imperfect. Life settled into a new rhythm. Vicky ran TechCore from the home office, flying to Boston monthly, but always home for dinner. Jack managed the Millbrook facility, which had become a model for corporate responsibility worldwide. Emma thrived with two parents fully present in her life. There were challenges. A hostile takeover attempt in November that Vicky defeated by rallying employee shareholders. An environmental violation at another facility that required Jack's expertise to remediate. Emma's struggles with math that had both parents up late learning Common Core together. But there were more triumphs. The facility's first quarter exceeded projections. 3 more communities requested the Millbrook model. Emma won the state science fair with a project on sustainable energy that Vicky and Jack had coached her through. We're doing it, Vicky said one December evening, snow falling outside, fire crackling inside. We're actually changing how business works. Slowly, Jack cautioned. Change this big takes time. I'm patient now. You taught me that. Emma looked up from her homework. Can companies really change, like permanently? Companies are just people, Vicky explained. And people can always change if they want to badly enough. Did you want to change? No, I needed to change. There's a difference. Want is a preference. Need is survival. I'm glad you survived, Emma said simply, returning to her homework. Jack and Vicky exchanged glances over her head. Their daughter, because that's what Emma was to Vicky now, papers filed, and everything had a way of distilling complex truths into simple statements. Christmas approached with all its chaos. The facility held its first holiday party, families invited. Jack watched Vicky work the room, but differently than before. She knew everyone's names, their children's interests, their concerns. She wasn't performing corporate leadership. She was living community membership. You've created something special, Patricia Wells told him. She'd become the facility's community liaison, finding redemption in serving the town she'd helped Webb nearly destroy. We all did. That's the point. No, you and Vicky specifically. You proved that enemies can become partners. That's different than forgiveness. It's transformation. She was right. What he and Vicky had built wasn't just a marriage or a business model. It was proof that the US versus them mentality of corporate America was a choice, not a requirement. That night after the party, they tucked Emma into bed together. Tell me the story again, she requested, about how you met. You know this story by heart, Jack said. I like hearing it. It reminds me that bad things can become good things. So Vicky told it again, the crash, the rescue, the scarf. But this time she added new details. How scared she'd been. How Jack's voice had pulled her back from darkness. How Emma's acceptance had healed wounds she didn't know she had. It's a good story, Emma said sleepily. Better than fairy tales. Why? Vicky asked. Because it's true. And because it's not over. We get to keep writing it. After Emma fell asleep, Jack and Vicky stood in the doorway watching her breathe. She's right, Jack said. We get to keep writing it. What do you want the next chapter to be? Whatever it is, we write it together. Together, Vicky agreed, and the word carried all their promises, all their struggles, all their love. Outside, snow continued to fall on Millbrook, on the facility that had brought them together, on the town that had embraced change despite its fears. It was December again, a year since that first Christmas when Vicky had chosen to stay. Now she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. The morning brought news that would test everything they'd built. Richard Blackstone called early, his voice grim. There's been a development. Chen International, David's cousin's company, is attempting to acquire TechCore. Hostile takeover. They're offering shareholders 40% above market value. Vicky went pale. That's impossible. We have protective measures, which expire in 6 weeks. Charles put them in place 20 years ago, never thinking family would turn on family. What do they want? To gut the company, sell off the profitable divisions, close the rest. The Millbrook model would be first to go, too expensive, they say. Jack watched his wife transform into the CEO, steel replacing softness. But now he recognized it wasn't coldness, it was determination. We fight. David will help. We'll rally the shareholders, the employees, the communities. It might not be enough. They have deep pockets. We have something better. We have proof that there's another way to do business. And we have 6 weeks to convince the world. She hung up and looked at Jack. This could destroy everything. Or it could be the chance to prove everything. David's cousins represent the old way. We represent the future. Let the shareholders choose. You make it sound simple. The important things usually are. Emma appeared, sensing tension. What's wrong? Bad people want to take over Vicky's company, Jack explained. Our company, Vicky corrected. TechCore belongs to everyone it serves now. Then everyone will fight for it, Emma said, with 8-year-old certainty. From the mouths of babes again. The war room was their kitchen table, covered in shareholder reports, legal documents, and Emma's math homework. David Chen arrived within hours of the news, his face grim but determined. He'd brought files that painted a disturbing picture of his cousin's company. Environmental disasters worker, exploitation communities, destroyed in the name of profit. They're everything my father stood against, David said, spreading photographs across the table. This factory in Indonesia shut down after poisoning the water table. This town in Mexico abandoned when labor got too expensive. They don't build, they extract. And they want to do the same to TechCore, Vicky said, studying the evidence. Strip it for parts, sell the valuable pieces, destroy the rest. Can we stop them? Jack asked. Maybe. The shareholders have to approve the sale. We have 6 weeks to convince them that our vision is worth more than their immediate profit. Emma, who'd been quietly doing homework, looked up. Why would anyone choose money over doing the right thing? Because most people don't believe they have to choose, Vicky explained. They think money is the right thing. We have to prove otherwise. The first move came from Chen International. 2 days later, a glossy presentation sent to every shareholder promising unprecedented returns. They painted Vicky as an idealist whose bleeding heart was bleeding profits. The Millbrook model was presented as an expensive experiment that would bankrupt the company within 5 years. It's lies, Jack said, reading the report. It's fear, Vicky corrected. They're selling fear of change, fear of reduced profits, fear of the unknown. Fear sells better than hope. So we sell courage instead. She looked at him, something shifting in her expression. Yes, we sell courage. The counter-campaign began immediately. Instead of glossy reports, they invited shareholders to Millbrook. Instead of promises, they offered proof. The facility ran tours showing the community garden, the solar panels, the happy employees who weren't just workers, but partners. Tom Bradley became an unexpected spokesperson, his hardware store thriving from facility contracts. TechCore didn't just bring jobs, he told a group of institutional investors. They brought hope. My son came back from Boston because there's a future here now. You can't put a stock price on that. Mrs. Chen from the library created a presentation about literacy programs funded by facility profits. Patricia Wells showed how employee retention had reached 93%, saving millions in training costs. Even Emma contributed, explaining to confused executives how the facility's environmental programs had become part of school curricula. "You've militarized the entire town," Richard Blackstone said admiringly after witnessing the presentations. "We've given them ownership," Vicky corrected. "This isn't just about TechCore. It's about proving that business can be a force for good." But Chen International fought dirty. They hired private investigators to dig into Vicky's past, Jack's history, even Emma's school records. The resulting report painted Vicky as emotionally unstable Jack, as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, and their marriage as a conflict of interest that should disqualify Vicky from leadership. "They're using our family against us," Jack said, fists clenched as he read the poisonous document. "Let them," Vicky said calmly. "Every attack on our personal life proves they have no legitimate business argument, but the attacks took their toll." Emma came home from school crying because classmates had heard their parents were corrupt. Jack found himself defending their marriage to reporters who implied he'd married Vicky for money. Vicky faced board members who questioned whether her judgment was compromised by emotion. "Maybe it is, she told them in a conference call that would later become legendary. "Maybe my judgment is compromised by caring about people more than profits. Maybe I am emotional about destroying communities for quarterly gains. Maybe that's exactly what TechCore needs, leaders whose judgment is compromised by humanity." The tide began to turn when employees started organizing. Not union organizing, something more powerful. They pooled resources to buy shares, giving them voting rights. Small investors who'd never attended a shareholder meeting began registering to vote. Communities that hosted TechCore facilities worldwide started documenting the difference between old policies and the Millbrook model. "It's a movement," David said wonderingly, watching social media explode with #TechCoreValues posts. "You've started an actual movement." "We've revealed a movement that already existed," Vicky corrected. "People have always wanted businesses to have consciences. We just proved it's possible." 3 weeks before the vote, Chen International played what they thought was their trump card. They released security footage from the night of Vicky's accident, edited to make it seem like she'd been drinking, implying the crash was her fault and the company had covered it up. Jack wanted to rage to fight back with equal viciousness. But Vicky had a different approach. "We tell the truth," she said simply. "All of it." The next day, she held a press conference at the facility. No script, no PR team, just Vicky standing in the community garden with Jack and Emma beside her. "Chen International wants you to believe I'm unfit to lead because I'm human," she began. "They're right that I'm human. The night of my accident, I was driving to Jack Morrison's house to apologize for what TechCore had done to his family. I was emotional. I was distracted by guilt. And yes, I crashed my car." She paused, letting the admission sink in. "But that crash saved my life. Not just physically, though. Jack literally saved me that night, but spiritually. It forced me to confront who I'd become in pursuit of success. It introduced me to a family that taught me what success really means. It sparked the transformation of TechCore from a soulless corporation into a community partner." She looked directly at the cameras. "Chen International is asking you to choose between profit and principle. But that's a false choice. The Millbrook model proves we can have both. Yes, our margins are lower initially, but our sustainability is infinite. We're not extracting value, we're creating it. We're not exploiting communities, we're enriching them. We're not just building data centers, we're building futures." Emma stepped forward unscripted. "My mom died because we lost insurance when TechCore lied about my dad. Now my new mom runs TechCore and tells the truth. Which one do you want?" The clip went viral within hours. An 8-year-old had distilled the entire conflict into 2 sentences that no PR team could have crafted. Chen International tried to respond, but their polished executives couldn't compete with the authenticity of a child defending her family. Their supporters began wavering. Shareholders who'd been leaning toward the buyout started asking harder questions about long-term versus short-term gains. "We might actually win this," Richard Blackstone said during a strategy call. "We have to win," Vicky replied. "Not just for TechCore, but for every company watching to see if principles can triumph over pure profit." The final week brought unexpected allies. Marcus Webb from federal prison sent a letter to shareholders. Not supporting Vicky, he wasn't capable of that, but warning against Chen International detailing their criminal practices he'd tried to emulate. It was self-serving an attempt to reduce his sentence, but it was also devastating to Chen International's credibility. Even our enemies are helping us, Jack marveled. Webb's not helping us. He's hurting them. There's a difference, Vicky said, but I'll take it. 3 days before the vote, Chen International made their final offer 50% above market value. It was an astronomical sum, enough to make even principled shareholders waver. We can't match that, Richard said. It's impossible. Money isn't our currency, Vicky replied. Purpose is. She spent the next 48 hours on calls with every major shareholder, not talking numbers but narratives. She shared stories of employees whose lives had changed communities, that had been revitalized children who now had futures because of the Millbrook model. You're not just shareholders, she told them. You're authors of a new chapter in corporate history. Years from now, will you be proud that you took 50% more money, or will you be proud that you chose to prove business can be better? The night before the vote, they couldn't sleep. Jack found Vicky in the workshop at 3 a.m., attempting to sand wood still badly, but with determination. What are you making? I don't know. I just needed to do something with my hands, something real. He guided her hands, showing her the grain, the proper pressure. Whatever happens tomorrow, we've already won. How do you figure? We've proven it's possible. Even if Chen International takes over, other companies have seen what we built. The seed is planted. Seeds need time to grow. Then we'll buy that time one way or another. Emma found them there at dawn, wrapped in her blanket. Today's the big day. Today's the day, Vicky confirmed. Are you scared? Terrified. Good. Mrs. Patterson says being scared means it matters. They went to the facility together, the whole town gathering to watch the shareholder vote on a large screen David had set up. It felt like watching election returns, except the future of their community hung in the balance. The voting began at 9 a.m. Early returns favored Chen International institutional investors taking the easy money. But as smaller shareholders voted, the gap narrowed. Employees who'd bought shares voted overwhelmingly for Vicky. Communities voted for hope over cash. By noon, it was deadlocked 48% for the buyout, 47% against 5% outstanding. Who hasn't voted? Vicky asked David, who was tracking in real time. 3 pension funds, 2 university endowments, and... Oh! What? The Morrison Family Trust. Jack looked confused. What Morrison Family Trust? David pulled up the records. Established 3 years ago by Sarah Morrison, owns 50,000 shares of TechCore. The room went silent. Jack's face was white. That's impossible. We never had that kind of money. Vicky was typing frantically. She inherited shares from her father. He was an early investor in Charles Chen's startup that became TechCore. She never sold them, even when... She looked at Jack with tears in her eyes. Even when you needed money for her treatment, she held them. Why? Emma Wise, beyond her years, understood first. For the future. For Dad's future. For my future. Mom saved them for when they'd matter most. The Morrison Family Trust hadn't voted yet. As beneficiary, Jack had the right to cast those votes. That's 1.2% of outstanding shares, David calculated. Enough to swing the entire vote. Every eye in the room turned to Jack. The man whose life TechCore had destroyed held its future in his hands. The poetry of it was almost unbearable. She knew, Jack said quietly. Somehow Sarah knew this moment would come. That's why she never told me, never sold them, even when we were desperate. You don't have to vote with us, Vicky said. If you want to take the buyout money, provide for Emma's future. Emma's future isn't about money. He looked at his daughter, his wife, his community. Sarah believed in redemption, in second chances, in the possibility that broken things could be rebuilt better than before. He walked to the computer, logged into the trust account with credentials the lawyer had just provided, and cast 50,000 votes against the buyout. The final tally came in at 2:47 p.m. The buyout had failed by 1.8%. The room erupted. People were crying, cheering, hugging. Tom Bradley lifted Emma onto his shoulders. Mrs. Chen was doing some kind of victory dance that defied her age. Even Richard Blackstone, connected via video, was openly weeping, but Jack only had eyes for Vicky, who stood in the center of the chaos looking stunned. "We did it," she said. "Sarah did it," Jack corrected. "She saved TechCore from beyond the grave. She saved us. All of us."
Boss.
That night, Chen International announced they were withdrawing their bid, citing irreconcilable visions for corporate responsibility. The financial press called it the upset of the decade. Harvard Business School announced they were creating a case study on the Millbrook defense, as it was already being called. But in Millbrook itself, the celebration was more personal. The entire town gathered at the facility for an impromptu party. Families who'd feared for their futures danced in halls that would continue to provide stability. Children played in gardens that wouldn't be paved over for profit. "Speech," someone called out, and soon everyone was chanting. Vicky tried to defer, but the crowd wouldn't accept it. Finally, she stood on a table, Jack steadying her Emma beside them. "This victory isn't mine or Jack's or even TechCore's," she began. "It belongs to everyone who believes business should serve humanity, not the other way around. It belongs to communities that refuse to be exploited. It belongs to employees who demand to be partners, not just resources." She paused, looking at the faces around her people who'd become family, a town that had become home. "But most of all, it belongs to a woman I never met. Sarah Morrison believed in the future even when she wouldn't see it. She held on to hope in the form of stock certificates, trusting that someday they'd matter. Today her faith saved not just a company, but a vision of what all companies could be." She raised her glass of apple cider. "To Sarah Morrison, to second chances, to the future we're building together." "To the future!" the crowd roared back. Later, after Emma was asleep and the town had finally quieted, Jack and Vicky stood in the workshop where he'd taught her to sandwood, where she'd learned that creation took patience, that beautiful things emerged from rough materials with careful attention. "What would Sarah think of all this?" Vicky asked. "She'd be happy that her death led to life, that her loss led to love, that her absence led to your presence." "I wish I could have met her." "You did in a way. Every time Emma laughs, that's Sarah. Every time this community chooses hope over fear, that's Sarah. Every time someone sacrifices immediate gain for long-term good, that's Sarah. That's you too, and Emma, and now me, I hope. Now all of us." They stood in comfortable silence, surrounded by tools and sawdust and possibility. "So what's next?" Vicky asked. "We've saved the company, transformed the business model, proven that principles can triumph. What do we do now?" "Now we do the hard part. We maintain it. We grow it. We prove it wasn't a fluke, but a new way forward." That sounds less dramatic than fighting hostile takeovers. Most important things are. It's easy to be principled in a crisis. It's harder to maintain those principles in daily decisions, quarterly pressures, ordinary temptations. Good thing I have you to keep me honest. Good thing we have each other. The next morning brought a new challenge, but a welcome one. 3 more communities wanted to implement the Millbrook model. 2 international corporations wanted to study their practices. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell their story. "We're going to be busy," Vicky said, looking at the requests. "We were always going to be busy. At least now we're busy with purpose." Emma looked up from her breakfast. "Does this mean you'll be traveling more?" "Some," Vicky admitted, "but never for long, and never without a way to call home every night." "And we could come sometimes," Emma asked hopefully. "See other places that are becoming like Millbrook. I'd love that. We could show the world that this works everywhere, not just in Vermont." "Family field trips to save corporate America," Jack said. "Sure, why not?" They all laughed, but there was truth in the joke. They were a family that had accidentally become a symbol, a small town that had become a model, a love story that had become a business revolution. Over the following months, the Millbrook model spread faster than anyone had anticipated, not just to other TechCore facilities, but to entirely different companies. CEOs reached out to Vicky for advice. Business schools sent students to study their practices. The facility became a pilgrimage site for executives seeking to understand how principle and profit could coexist. "You've become the oracle of ethical capitalism," Jack teased one evening as Vicky finished her 5th consultation call of the day. "I never wanted to be an oracle. I just wanted to run a company without losing my soul." Mission accomplished, soul intact, company thriving. Family thriving too, Emma added, showing them her report card straight A's with a special commendation for her presentation on sustainable business practices. Where did you present on that? Jack asked. Career Day. I talked about how my mom is changing the world one company at a time. Both your moms, Vicky said softly. Both my moms, Emma agreed. One started it by saving the stocks. One finished it by saving the company. I got lucky twice. That night, Vicky couldn't sleep. She found herself in the living room staring at a photo Jack had finally hung Sarah on their wedding day, radiant with hope for a future she wouldn't see. Thank you, Vicky whispered to the photo. For the shares, yes, but more for raising Jack to be who he is, for giving Emma her strength, for creating the family that had room for me. She didn't believe in ghosts or signs, but at that moment the wind chimes Sarah had made tinkled softly despite the still air. Vicky chose to take it as approval as blessing, as one woman who'd fought for family, acknowledging another who was continuing the fight. Jack found her there at dawn, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Couldn't sleep either. Too much future to think about. Good problem to have. The best problem. They sat together watching the sun rise over Millbrook, over the facility that had brought them together, over the town that had taught a CEO to be human and a broken man to believe again. David called on, Jack said. Chen International is restructuring. His cousins are out. New leadership wants to partner with us, not fight us. Former enemies becoming allies. It's becoming a pattern. A good pattern. The world needs more conversion stories, fewer conquest ones. Speaking of which, Richard Blackstone is retiring. He wants me to take over as board chair as well as CEO. That's huge. You'd have complete control, complete responsibility. The board wants to add community representatives, employee positions. Make it a true partnership model. Will you do it? Only if you join the board. Official position, not just spouse of the CEO. Jack considered. 3 years ago, TechCore had destroyed his life. Now it was offering him a chance to reshape corporate governance entirely. Sarah would find this hilarious, he said. Is that a yes? That's a yes, but I'm keeping the workshop. A man needs something real to balance all those spreadsheets. Deal. I'll keep learning to sand badly. Perfect. We'll be perfectly imperfect together. Emma burst in, already dressed for school. Are you two being romantic again? It's too early for romance. It's never too early for romance, Vicky said, pulling Emma into their hug. Gross. But also nice. But mostly gross. They laughed, the three of them tangled together in the morning light, a family forged from loss and found in the most unlikely circumstances. The doorbell rang, David arriving for their morning strategy session, bringing pastries from the local bakery that now supplied the facility's cafeteria. Behind him came Patricia Wells with community reports, Tom Bradley with expansion proposals, Mrs. Chen with literacy program updates. Their kitchen table, once a war room for fighting hostile takeovers, had become a round table for building better futures. Everyone had a voice, a vote of value beyond their economic contribution. This is it, Vicky said quietly to Jack as their home filled with purposeful chaos. This is what we were fighting for. No, Jack corrected. This is what we're fighting with. What we're fighting for is bigger, every company, every community, every family that deserves better than extraction and exploitation. That's a big fight. Good thing we've got a big family. Looking around the room at David, explaining technology with patience, at Patricia finding redemption in service at Tom and Mrs. Chen representing a community that had chosen courage over fear at Emma, absorbing it all with 8-year-old wisdom, Jack knew they could do it. Not overnight, not without setbacks, not without compromise and conflict and occasional failure, but together they could prove that business wasn't separate from life but part of it. That success meant more than money. That a crashed Tesla on a snowy night could lead to revolution in boardrooms worldwide. Ready for another day of changing the world? Vicky asked. Ready for another day of living in it, Jack replied. The changing happens naturally when you're living right. The morning strategy session had barely begun when Vicky's phone rang with a call that would change everything once again. It was the Securities and Exchange Commission. Ms. Chen, we need to discuss some irregularities in the recent shareholder vote. The investigator's voice was carefully neutral, specifically regarding the Morrison Family Trust. Jack's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. Vicky put the call on speaker, her face pale but composed. "What irregularities, Bopo?" she asked. Chen International has filed a complaint suggesting the trust was manipulated, that Sarah Morrison couldn't have legally established it given her medical condition at the time. The kitchen went silent. Emma looked between the adults, confused but sensing danger. David immediately opened his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. "That's a lie," Jack said, his voice low and dangerous. "Sarah was completely lucid when she made those arrangements. I'm sure she was Mr. Morrison. But Chen International has produced documents suggesting otherwise. We need to investigate. In the meantime, the vote results are suspended." After Vicky ended the call, the room exploded into action. Patricia started making calls to lawyers. Tom Bradley began rallying the town. But Jack just sat there staring at nothing. "They're using Sarah's death against us," he said quietly. "They're trying to say she was too sick to make decisions." "We'll fight it," Vicky said fiercely. "David, what can you find?" "Already on it." His screen filled with medical records, legal documents, timestamps. "The trust was established 3 months before Sarah's final decline. I can prove she was competent." "It won't matter," Jack said, standing abruptly. "Chen International doesn't need to win. They just need to create enough doubt to force a new vote, and by then they'll have poisoned the well." He walked out, leaving everyone stunned. Vicky found him in the workshop, not working, just standing among the tools and half-finished projects. "This is where she told me about the diagnosis," he said without turning. "Right here. She was working on a jewelry box for Emma's 5th birthday. Her hands were still steady. Her mind was sharp. She looked at me and said, 'We need to talk about the future.'" Jack. She knew. Somehow she knew that TechCore would matter again. That those shares she'd inherited from her father weren't just paper. "She made me promise not to sell them no matter how bad things got. I thought it was sentiment holding on to her father's memory, but it was more." Vicky wrapped her arms around him from behind. "Then we prove it. We show them who Sarah really was. How do you prove someone's mental state 3 years after they're gone? With witnesses, with evidence, with truth." Emma appeared in the doorway holding a worn notebook. "This might help." It was Sarah's journal, the one Emma had hidden in her room, reading entries when she missed her mother most. Jack had never been able to bring himself to read it. Mom wrote everything down, her thoughts, her plans, her reasons. Emma opened it to a marked page. "Listen to this." She read in her clear young voice, "Today I established the trust. Jack doesn't know. He'd insist we sell the shares for treatment, but some things are worth more than time. These shares are Emma's future, Jack's redemption. Someday TechCore will need to choose between its soul and its greed. When that day comes, I want my family to have a voice, even if I'm not there to speak." The workshop fell silent, except for Jack's quiet sobs. Sarah had seen it all planned for, it all trusted in a future she wouldn't witness. "There's more," Emma said, flipping pages. She wrote about the legal stuff, about making sure everything was proper. She even recorded herself with the lawyer to prevent any challenges. "Recorded?" David's eyes lit up. "Where's the recording?" It took 3 hours to find it stored in Sarah's old email account that Jack had never closed. The video was clear, Sarah thin but alert, discussing the trust with precision and purpose. The lawyer confirming her mental competence. Witnesses signing documents. "This destroys Chen International's claim," David said, "but we need to present it properly." "No," Vicky said suddenly. "We don't present it at all. Not yet." Everyone stared at her. She was smiling, but it was the smile of a CEO who'd just seen 3 moves ahead. "Chen International thinks they've found our weakness. Let them believe it. Let them push this narrative about Sarah being incompetent. Then at the SEC hearing, we don't just prove them wrong, we destroy them with it." "That's risky," Patricia warned. "Everything we've done has been risky. Jack, I need you to trust me." He looked at his wife. This woman who'd transformed from corporate shark to community champion, who'd chosen family over fortune, who now wanted to use his dead wife's memory as a weapon for good. "I trust you." The next 2 weeks were agony. Chen International's PR machine went into overdrive, painting Sarah as a tragic figure manipulated by her illness, Jack as an opportunist who'd used his dying wife's shares, Vicky as a master manipulator who'd orchestrated everything. The town rallied around them, but doubt crept in among shareholders. Stock prices wobbled. The board grew nervous. Richard Blackstone called daily, begging Vicky to release the evidence early. "Not yet," she kept saying. "The trap isn't ready." Emma struggled most, hearing her mother's memory, maligned at school, online, and overheard conversations. One night Jack found her crying in her room, Sarah's journal clutched to her chest. "They're saying Mom was crazy," she sobbed, "that she didn't know what she was doing." "Your mom was the sanest person I ever knew," Jack said, holding her tight. "And soon, everyone will know that." Why is Vicky waiting? Why doesn't she show them the truth? Because sometimes, sweetheart, you have to let people reveal their true selves before you reveal yours. The SEC hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in Boston. The night before, Vicky gathered everyone in their kitchen one more time. "Tomorrow, we're not just defending a vote," she said. "We're defending the idea that ordinary people can stand against corporate power, that families matter more than profits, that truth eventually defeats lies." "No pressure?" Tom Bradley joked weakly. "All the pressure," Vicky corrected, "but we're ready for it." She looked at each person around the table, her chosen family, her accidental army, her proof that business could be personal without being corrupted. "David, you'll present the technical evidence. Patricia, the legal framework. Jack," she took his hand, "you'll tell them about Sarah, who she really was." "I don't know if I can." "You can. You're the only one who can." That night, none of them slept well. Jack lay awake thinking about Sarah, about the strength it took to plan for a future you wouldn't see. Vicky stared at ceiling, running through scenarios, calculating probabilities. Emma, despite being told to stay home, packed a bag with her best dress and her mother's journal. The hearing room was packed. Media, shareholders, employees, competitors, everyone wanting to witness what might be the end of the Millbrook miracle or its greatest triumph. Chen International went first. Their lawyers were smooth, professional, devastating. They presented medical records showing Sarah's treatment schedule, cognitive effects of medications, the tumor that had eventually claimed her life. They painted a picture of a dying woman confused and manipulated, signing documents she couldn't understand. "It's a tragedy," their lead counsel concluded, "but we cannot allow sentiment to override law. The Morrison Family Trust was established by someone mentally incompetent. The vote must be invalidated." Vicky stood slowly. She didn't move to the podium immediately, instead walking to where Jack sat and placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're right about one thing," she began. "This is about tragedy, but not the tragedy of Sarah Morrison's death. The tragedy of what corporations like Chen International have become so divorced from humanity that they'll desecrate a woman's memory for profit." She moved to the podium now, commanding the room. Sarah Morrison was dying when she established that trust. That's true. But dying doesn't mean incompetent. Dying, in fact, often brings the clearest sight. She saw what TechCore had become under Marcus Webb. She saw what it had done to her husband, her family, her community, and she saw what it could become with the right leadership. Speculation. Chen International's lawyer interrupted. "No, prophecy." Vicky clicked a remote. Sarah's face filled the screen, thin but radiant, very much alive despite her illness. The room gasped. The video played Sarah discussing the trust with precision, explaining her reasoning with eloquence, planning for a future she'd never see with heartbreaking clarity. "My body is failing," Sarah's recorded voice said, "but my mind is clear, clearer than it's ever been. These shares aren't just an investment, they're a voice, a vote, a chance for redemption. TechCore destroyed my husband's career and contributed to our family's suffering. But I believe in second chances. I believe companies like people can change, so I'm preserving these shares for the moment when that change becomes possible. When someone inside TechCore finally says enough to the greed and corruption." The recording continued for 20 minutes. Sarah, with devastating prescience, had anticipated challenges to her competence. She'd submitted to cognitive tests, she'd had multiple witnesses. She'd created an unassailable legal framework. But more than that, she'd left a message. If you're watching this, her recorded self said, it means the moment has come. The choice between profit and principle, between extraction and creation, between fear and hope. I won't be there to cast these votes myself, but my family will be. Trust them. Trust the man who gave up everything rather than lie. Trust the daughter who'll inherit the world you're building. And trust whoever is leading the fight for TechCore's soul, because if they've gotten this far, they're worth believing in. The room was silent when the video ended. Several people were crying. Even Chen International's lawyers looked shaken. But Vicky wasn't done. Chen International wants you to believe Sarah Morrison was incompetent. Let me show you what incompetence really looks like. She clicked again. Financial records filled the screen. Environmental disasters. Communities destroyed. All linked to Chen International's practices. This is incompetence. Destroying long-term value for short-term gain. Poisoning the ground you stand on for quarterly earnings. That's not business, it's suicide in slow motion. David took over presenting technical evidence of Chen International's market manipulation, their attempts to crash TechCore's stock price, their probable involvement in Vicky's accident years ago. Patricia detailed the legal precedents, the ironclad nature of Sarah's trust, the impossibility of Chen International's claims. But it was Jack who delivered the killing blow. He stood slowly. Emma suddenly beside him. She'd snuck into the hearing despite being told to stay home. My wife died 3 years ago, he said simply. TechCore's corruption contributed to her death. I had every reason to hate this company, to want it destroyed. But Sarah saw something I couldn't. She saw that institutions like people can be redeemed. Not easily, not quickly, not without cost, but possibly. He looked at Chen International's representatives. You want to invalidate her trust, fine. But you should know what you're really invalidating. You're saying that dying people can't make decisions about the future. You're saying that hope is a form of incompetence. You're saying that believing in redemption is a sign of mental deficiency. Emma stepped forward, holding her mother's journal. My mom wrote something else. Want to hear it? The SEC commissioners nodded, entranced by the 8-year-old's composure. Emma read, they'll probably challenge this someday. Corporate lawyers always do when conscience threatens profit. But I'm not worried. Truth has a way of surfacing like seeds through concrete. And my family. Jack's integrity. Emma's innocence, and whoever joins them in this fight, their truth incarnate. Bet against them if you want, but I wouldn't. The hearing room erupted. Shareholders were on their feet, some applauding, others arguing. The SEC commissioners huddled in conference. Chen International's lawyers tried to object but couldn't be heard over the chaos. When order was finally restored, the lead commissioner spoke. We've seen enough. The Morrison Family Trust was legally established by a competent individual. The shareholder vote stands. Chen International's challenge is rejected. Furthermore, we're opening an investigation into Chen International's practices, including possible market manipulation and fraudulent claims. Chen International's representatives fled. Their supporters melted away. Within hours, their own board would announce a complete restructuring, distancing themselves from the failed takeover attempt. But in the hearing room, the victory felt bigger than one company defeating another. It felt like validation of everything they'd fought for. The idea that business could have a conscience, that communities could stand against corporations, that love could triumph over greed. We did it, Vicky said, pulling Jack and Emma into a fierce hug. Sarah did it, Jack corrected. We just finished what she started. No, Emma said, with 8-year-old wisdom. We're not finished, we're just beginning. She was right, of course. The victory over Chen International was just one battle in a larger war for corporate responsibility. But it was a crucial battle, one that would be studied in business schools and boardrooms for decades. The ride home was quiet, each of them processing what had happened. Emma fell asleep against Jack's shoulder, emotionally exhausted, but clutching her mother's journal like a talisman. Vicky drove occasionally, reaching over to squeeze Jack's hand. She really saw all this coming, Vicky said softly. Sarah, she planned for it all. She saw you coming, Jack replied. Somehow she knew someone like you would appear, someone who could change TechCore from the inside, someone who would crash into your life, someone who would save it. They arrived home to find the entire town waiting. The celebration that night was different from the earlier ones, deeper, more meaningful. This wasn't just about saving jobs or winning votes. This was about vindication, about proving that ordinary people could stand against extraordinary power and win. Richard Blackstone called during the party. The board met in emergency session. Unanimous vote, you have complete autonomy. The Millbrook model is now the TechCore model company-wide. And Chen International is retreating from all markets where we operate. They know they can't compete with purpose. It's not about competition, Vicky replied. It's about conversion. Today's enemies becoming tomorrow's allies. You really believe that's possible? I'm living proof of it. I was the enemy once, the corporate CEO who only cared about profits. Now look where I am. Where you are is making history. After the call, Vicky found Jack in the workshop, finally alone. He was holding the piece of wood she'd been trying to sand, now smooth and ready for finishing. You did it, he said, showing her the piece. We did it. No, I mean this. You finally learned to sand properly. She laughed, but there were tears in her eyes. I had a good teacher. You had Sarah's wisdom, Emma's faith, and a town's worth of support. I had you. That made everything else possible. They stood together in the workshop where so much had happened, where Jack had rebuilt his life, where Vicky had learned to work with her hands, where Emma had done homework while history was being made around her. What would Sarah think of all this? Vicky asked. I asked myself that during the hearing, and I realized this is exactly what she expected. She knew that seeds planted in sorrow could bloom into joy. That's why she saved those shares, not as an investment, but as a possibility. A possibility of what? Of this, of us, of proving that broken things can be rebuilt stronger. Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her dress from the hearing. Are you two being romantic again? Always, Vicky said, pulling her into their embrace. Good, because I have an announcement. Emma pulled out a crumpled paper from her pocket. I wrote an essay about our family for school. Mrs. Patterson says it's going to be published in the state education magazine. What's it about? Jack asked. It's called My Two Moms, How Death and Life Made My Family Whole. It's about Mom saving the shares, and Vicky saving the company, and Dad saving everyone by being brave enough to love again. Jack and Vicky were both crying now, but Emma wasn't done. The last line is, some families are born, some are made, and some are forged in fire. Mine is all three, and that makes us unbreakable. When did you become such a writer? Vicky asked. When I needed to tell our story, someone has to. It's too important to forget. She was right. Within months, their story would be documented in business journals, made into a Harvard case study, optioned for a movie that would never quite capture the reality. But Emma's essay would remain the truest, telling a child's perspective on how corporate corruption became family redemption. The weeks that followed brought a new kind of challenge success. Other companies wanted to implement the Millbrook model. Communities worldwide reached out for guidance. The facility became a pilgrimage site for executives seeking transformation. We've become a movement, David said during one of their morning meetings, whether we intended to or not. All movements start with someone saying no to the status quo, Vicky replied. We just said it loud enough for others to hear. But success brought scrutiny. Journalists dug into every aspect of their lives. Competitors looked for weaknesses. Even allies sometimes questioned whether the model was sustainable long-term. Let them question, Jack said during one particularly difficult week. Questions lead to answers. Answers lead to understanding. Understanding leads to change. You're awfully philosophical for someone who builds furniture, Vicky teased. Wood teaches philosophy. Every grain has a purpose. Every knot tells a story. Every finished piece proves that patience and skill can transform raw material into something beautiful. Like us. Exactly like us. Their first anniversary approached with little fanfare. They were too busy with the international expansion of the Millbrook model to plan anything elaborate. But Emma had other ideas. We're having a party, she announced one morning. A proper anniversary party. The whole town's invited. Emma, we don't need... Jack started. Yes, we do. Because this isn't just your anniversary. It's the anniversary of when our town decided to believe in something better. That deserves celebration. She was right as usual. The party became a festival with the facility gardens transformed into a wonderland of lights and music. Employees and their families, board members and townspeople, former enemies and new allies, all gathered to celebrate not just a marriage, but a transformation. Richard Blackstone, now retired, but still a close advisor, gave a toast that would be quoted in business schools for years. They say business isn't personal. Vicky and Jack proved that's exactly backwards. Business is only business when it's personal. When you care about the people affected by your decisions, when you love the communities you serve, when you treat employees like family and family like the treasure it is, that's not just good ethics, it's good business. But the moment that mattered most came later, when the crowds had thinned and the music had softened. Jack and Vicky danced in the garden. They'd built Emma between them, the three of them swaying to a song about second chances. "Do you ever regret it?" Jack asked. "Giving up the traditional CEO life for this?" "Every traditional CEO in the world would trade places with me right now," Vicky replied. "They just don't know it yet." "How can you be sure?" "Because I have something they don't, a life worth living beyond the next quarterly report, a family that matters more than any stock price, a purpose that transcends profit, and really terrible wood sanding skills," Jack added. "Those too. My terribly mediocre craftsmanship is part of my charm." Emma looked up at them. "You two are weird." "The best families are," Vicky said. "Then we're definitely the best." As the evening wound down, they walked through the facility one more time. The building that had once represented corporate intrusion now stood as a monument to community partnership. Every solar panel, every garden bed, every locally sourced stone in the walls told the story of transformation. "This all started with a car crash," Vicky mused. "No," Jack corrected. "It started with Sarah seeing the future. The crash just set it in motion." "Or maybe," Emma said, taking both their hands, "it started with love. Mom's love made her save the shares. Dad's love made him save Vicky. Vicky's love made her save the company. Love saves everything eventually." They stood together in the gathering darkness. Three people who'd found each other through loss built something beautiful from broken pieces and proved that business could be a force for good when guided by conscience instead of greed. In the distance, the lights of Millbrook twinkled like stars, each one representing a family whose future had been secured by their fight. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, it always did. Other companies to transform other communities, to protect other battles between principle and profit. But tonight, they were simply a family going home, walking through gardens they'd planted, past buildings they'd made meaningful, toward a future they'd write together. "What do you think Sarah would say if she could see us now?" Vicky asked as they reached their door. Jack looked at his wife, his daughter, his life rebuilt from ashes into something stronger than before. "I think she'd say, about time." Emma giggled. "Mom was impatient sometimes." "She was perfect," Jack said. "So is this," Vicky added, encompassing everything with a gesture, their home, their family, their purpose-driven life. "No," Emma corrected with the wisdom that only children possess. "It's not perfect, it's real, and real is better than perfect." They went inside together, closing the door on a day that had begun with strategy sessions and ended with affirmations of everything that mattered. The porch light stayed on a beacon for anyone else who might be lost in the storm, looking for proof that crashes could lead to salvation, that corporations could have conscience, that love could redeem even the most corrupted systems.